The gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Hice, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Inglis, last year, when Congress was debating whether or not to create your position, the National Cyber Director, there were some concerns that we were just going to be creating yet another layer of bureaucracy. So if you can, help me understand, within the context of what we're talking about today, ransomware, what role does your office play?
Sir, thank you for the question. If I might put that in the context of describing three roles, my role being the one you've asked about. In the context of ransomware, my job would be to ensure that the various instruments that the federal government can bring to bear are deployed in a way that they're concurrent, that they're useful, that they're complementary. Therefore, to be proactive and concurrent foremost in mind. We have talked at some length in this hearing about the roles of sector risk management agencies like the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, about the roles of the FBI, about the roles of CISA. My job is to ensure that those are applied, and they are applied in a way that's concurrent. And looking back at the government, you don't need a PhD in government to essentially deal with the government. The second broad role that I would then describe is the role of the National Security Council, which outside of cyberspace is accountable to use all the instruments of power that this nation can bring to bear: diplomacy, intelligence, military resources, financial resources, sanctions that might be applied to bring about the proper conditions in all domains, not least of which cyberspace. And so that role is also important. And then the third role is those discrete individual roles of CISA, the FBI, sector risk management agencies, all of whom need to, within their lanes, do what they do, again, in a way that's complementary, concurrent, coherent, such that the sum of those parts is much greater than its arithmetic sum.
So it sounds like the buck stops with you when so far as ransomware is concerned. For every agency of the federal government, do you set federal policy?
The buck does stop with me in terms of the performance of the federal government. I'm not entirely kind of capable of setting the federal policy, often which is dictated by law or kind of existing statute. But to the extent that we need to adjust the various roles and responsibilities and relationships, I am the accountable person.
Okay, so as it would relate to whether or not, just as an example, we're going to withhold encryption keys from victims, as it appears the FBI has done, what role or policy would you have in that decision?
I should be involved in that decision. I wasn't, of course, on scene at the moment that that particular decision that we referred to in this hearing was made, but I should be I should be at the table for that decision. There are other factors that come into play in terms of making a determination about a decision of that sort, but I should have a huge influence on that in terms of determining how it plays out.
Factors. What other variables go into a decision of that nature?
Let's take that incident again. I wasn't there, so I'll just kind of observe from the distance that I enjoyed.
Well, the buck now stops with you. So what kind of variables would go into making that kind of decision with you at the helm?
There are two variables. The one that is not variable or at issue is a desire by the federal government to achieve the greatest, broadest possible disruption, right, of the threat that's being held against the United States or its citizens. The variables in that are how timely and how broad, right, can you be in the application of that disruption. If you're timely in the extreme, meaning that you disclose the moment you understand some insight into what the actors are doing, then you might give them the opportunity to escape kind of with their ill-gotten gains and to recover and to repeat that experience on another day. You might not know enough about the nature of what they've done such that you can disrupt it more broadly. If you wait too long, such that you take it down, right, in a strategic way, you've allowed too many victims to fall kind of victim to that. So the alignment has to be made between timeliness and breadth, but there's no question that disruption is the goal.
Okay, that doesn't really answer the question in terms of variables when it comes to making a decision about withholding encryption keys. You're talking in broad principles. If you would, I would appreciate if you could give me a more detailed answer in writing. Mr. Vornder, and I want to go to you now. The FBI certainly has had some credibility issues in the past years, recent years, but overall, I believe Americans look at the FBI as a source of competence as it relates to the cyber area, and yet this past weekend, at least is reported and appears to be accurate, that thousands of spam emails masquerading as FBI were sent to state and local officials warning them of a phony cyber attack. So can you explain to me now how this event does not raise somehow more questions regarding the veracity, the accuracy of FBI alerts in the future?
Sir, I'm not sure I understand your question, but let me do my best to answer it. Certainly, this weekend, you know, what has been
Let me clarify the question, because I don't want you beating around the bush. I want to hear a direct answer as much as possible. The question has to do with the phony emails that went out from the FBI warning of a phony cyber attack to state and local officials. That being done, how can the accuracy of future emails from the FBI be depended upon from state and local? How are they going to know what's real and what's not real if your own cyber has been hacked? I just want to make sure we're protecting state and local officials. How do they know what's coming from the FBI is accuracy if what we saw last week, this past weekend, happens again?
The gentleman's time has expired, but the gentleman may answer the question.
Sure, no problem. Sir, that is an isolated incident that you're referring to that happened this weekend. We know specifically how it occurred. We also know that no FBI data and no personally identifiable information was compromised. That software application and associated hardware was taken immediately offline. So we consider the incident contained, and we don't think it'll impact any future communications coming out of that email server.
I yield, Madam Chair, but that did not answer the question as to how people can rely upon the FBI's information in the future. Totally evaded my question, and I would like an answer. Thank you.